And welcome to the 2024 Nations Report Card reflecting on the results presented by the Council of Chief State School Officers, the National Governors Association, and the Council of the Great City Schools. I am Melissa McGrath, and I will serve as your MC throughout the event today. My job is to make sure we stay on time and on schedule so you can hear from the incredible speakers we have joining us today. Thank you for being here, and with that, let's get started. We will begin today with an overview of the results of the Nation's Report Card. We are pleased to be joined by Peggy Carr, Commissioner of the National Center for Education Statistics, also known as NCES. NCES is the nation's third largest federal statistical agency and is responsible for reporting on the condition of education in the U.S. Commissioner Carr formerly served as Associate Commissioner of the Assessment Division at NCES, a role she held for nearly 20 years. You likely have heard from Commissioner Carr today, reading her quote in a news report, or even hearing her at an earlier event. She has been so busy, and we are really pleased she could join us for a few minutes to provide a high-level overview of the 4th grade and 8th grade results of the 2024 Nations Report Card. With that, Commissioner Carr, I will turn it to you.
Thank you. The NAEP 2024 results released earlier today represent the third data point we now have since COVID-19, showing trends since that critical period in our history. The news is mostly not good, and particularly in reading. Achievement in reading has continued to decline for 4th and 8th graders over the last 2 years, with both grades falling 5 points below pre-pandemic levels. Our lowest performing students are at levels we haven't seen in 30 years. While COVID exacerbated these trends, it's clear they began before the pandemic. Let that sink in for a moment. Approximately 1/3 of 8th graders still struggle in reading, unable to, for example, explain an author's purpose or a story character's motivation. Mathematics does show some encouraging signs. For example, 4th graders who were kindergartners when the pandemic began have demonstrated growth over the last 2 years. However, they are still 3 points below pre-pandemic levels. In contrast, 8th grade mathematics remains down 8 points, with lower performing students falling further behind. The achievement gap in 8th grade math is now the largest ever recorded for this assessment. At the state and district levels, we see similar patterns to the nation. For example, most states and participating districts made little or no progress in reading. But the states and districts that may be in the most trouble are those that have not improved in any grade or subject since 2019. There are 16 such states and 5 districts. But some states are bucking the trend, and 2 states are exceeding their pre-pandemic performance. They would be Louisiana in grade 4 reading and algebra in grade 4 mathematics. And over the last 2 years, progress has been seen among 15 states and jurisdictions and 14 participating districts in at least 1 grade and subject. Several states and jurisdictions are improving 4th grade mathematics for both higher and lower performing students. They show it is possible to support meaningful progress for all students with the right focus and strategies. Poor results in key areas, particularly for our most vulnerable students, are not surprising when we consider a critical factor, absenteeism. In 2024, 15% of 4th grade students reported being absent 5 days or more in the month following or before the assessment. I am speaking to you today because the NAEP results are more than just numbers. They are a call to action. They highlight the challenges we face and the opportunities we must embrace to improve education outcomes for every student. At the National Center for Education Statistics, we provide the evidence, but the power to act on this evidence lies with you. You have the ability to shape education policies, advocate for schools, and ensure that education remains high on your state's and district's agenda. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, Commissioner Carr. Now we are joined by Martin West, who is an academic dean and professor of education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. He serves as vice chair of the National Assessment Governing Board, which oversees and sets policy for the NAEP. We are honored that Martin West could join us today to provide his reflections and expert perspective on the 2024 Nations Report results, both as a board member and as a well-respected academic researcher. Martin West, welcome.
Melissa, thanks so much for the opportunity. Thanks to all of you in the audience for your interest in these results. I'm going to share my presentation here so that I can provide a little bit of color to add to the very clear description of the results that you just got from Commissioner Carr. So let me, for the next few minutes, call attention to some of the headlines that we think it's important for you all to take away as policymakers. The first and most obvious is that our nation's students have not yet recovered from the disruptions of the pandemic, now 5+ years since their schools were shuttered in March of 2020. That is disappointing. It's sobering, as Commissioner Carr said, but in our view, it should not be surprising. If you think about what happens in the context of an educational disruption, and if you respond by getting kids back into school under normal learning conditions and think about what you would see on an assessment like the NAEP, you would actually see exactly the pattern that we see on the bottom right of this slide in grade 8 mathematics, where you had a decline in achievement during the disruption and then a flat line into the next administration. So as we turn to grade 4 in the top right, that actually reflects a bright spot to the extent that students made a modest, yes, incomplete, only partial recovery, but a recovery from the pandemic disruption that reflects the incredible efforts of families, policymakers, and educators around the nation. The more concerning pattern is what we see in reading in both grade 4 and grade 8, which is not a leveling out or a catching up, but rather continued decline. And there are at least two possible explanations for what's happening there. One is that students are suffering from the ongoing challenges facing the education system in the post-COVID years, from staffing shortages to behavior challenges and the like. But the other possibility is that really what we're seeing is less about the pandemic and more the continuation of a decade-long trend. If I look at the two charts showing reading performance here, and I didn't know when the pandemic occurred, I would struggle to identify the pandemic disruption years as between 2019 and 2022. What I see rather is a picture of steady decline starting around 2015. And that's something that I think we need to keep in mind, that our problems as an education system right now predate the pandemic, as important as that was. Of course, when we look beyond the national picture and across the states participating in the NAEP, we see variation in the patterns that they experienced of change between 2022, the last administration, and 2024. We saw 15 states who were contributing to the nationwide increase in math scores in 4th grade with statistically significant gains of their own. Meanwhile, we had 10 states who saw declines in at least one grade and subject area. And you can see those in yellow on the slide with the asterisks indicating the number of tests, up to 4, where they experienced declines. But the variation in the specific patterns between 22 and 24 shouldn't obscure what I think is the most important takeaway as we look across the states, and that is that the persistence of learning loss from the pandemic is a pervasive pattern nationwide. Every single state is below its pre-pandemic achievement level in at least one grade or subject area. And that's true even of those two bright spots that Commissioner Carr mentioned, Louisiana and Alabama, which in at least one subject had exceeded their pre-pandemic level. So learning loss is a pervasive pattern nationally. The second very important phenomenon that we need to be aware of as we analyze these results is the growing inequality in achievement among American students that they reveal. One of the ways we look at this is by seeing what's happened at different percentile levels of the achievement distribution from the 10th all the way up to the 90th. Here you can see how performance has trended at each of those levels all the way back to 2011. And what you can see is for more than a decade now, we've seen a steady decline in achievement among low achieving students and increase or resilience among our higher achieving students. So this means that we're seeing much more inequality overall. But to try to end on an encouraging note, as we look back at the longer term history of the NAEP program and this assessment, we do see evidence that significant progress is possible, not just in improving average scores, but in addressing the challenge of inequality as well. In particular, if we look from 2000 to 2009, we see that the NAEP revealed steady progress. No, not as fast as we would have liked, frustratingly slow at times, but very consistent progress towards raising students' achievement levels, with the greatest gains being made by our lowest performing students. So I'll leave with the thought that while it's often popular in the field of education policy and practice to look for the next shiny new thing, to go to the places that are being successful or identified as successes right in the moment and see what they're doing, we may be in a situation right now where we have an opportunity to learn from our past and what's contributed to progress in prior generations. Thank you again, Melissa, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Martin. We appreciate your insight and reflection. I want to just say I appreciate Commissioner Carr noting a call to action, and I appreciate you in showing evidence that progress is possible. Now, we will turn to a panel of Chief State School Officers for their reflections on the 4th grade and 8th grade results, both in their states and nationally. We will be joined by Eric Mackey, State Superintendent in Alabama, and Angélica Infante-Green, Commissioner of Education in Rhode Island. To moderate the conversation, I want to introduce Carissa Moffett-Miller. She is the CEO of the Council of Chief State School Officers, where she works with state education chiefs to ensure all students have the opportunity to graduate from high school prepared for college, careers, and life. Carissa, I will turn it to you.
Thank you, Melissa. And I want to extend a special thanks to Dr. Carr and Dr. West for kicking us off today. We're going to spend just a brief amount of time where I'm joined by Superintendent Mackey and Commissioner Infante-Green and diving a little more into the results. We've got the top line messages and information. I'm going to kick us off by just talking about some of the things that work. I think Dr. West referred to that in his comments about some of the things that we know. I'll reference a couple of reports that CCSSO has put out and landed on as key things that are important for us to look at. And one was A Nation of Readers in 2020. We've looked at how all 50 states now have adopted laws, policies, or fund programs that are aligned with evidence-based reading instruction. We know that's tremendous progress, but today's results, the sobering results, are a full reminder that full implementation takes time and effect. And so sticking with the evidence-based work we know is a key part of what we're doing. There's glimmers of hope in math, and we do have Dr. Mackey with us and Dr. Infante-Green, who will be able to talk about their results, where they've seen that. And our most recent A Nation of Problem Solvers focuses on evidence-based math instruction as well. It's grounded in the 2008 National Mathematics Panel, and we know there's evidence base for how to go about teaching math. So I'll start there. Welcome to both of you for joining us today. Dr. West talked a little bit about some of the nuance in the results, and there's so much to dig into, but I want to give you both an opportunity to speak to what you saw in your state scores and what maybe is behind the numbers for each of you. I'll start with you, Dr. Infante-Green.
Hi. So as we looked at our results, our NAEP results, it really mirrored our state assessments. So we're really excited about that because it's a direct correlation. And it really helps us because we know where to move and how to keep moving and the things that we have put in place and where it is moving in our state. We saw an increase in 4th grade math. We're really excited about that because we have been implementing high quality curriculum for math for a little bit longer, and we have more of an implementation in math than we do in literacy at this point with the curriculum. So we're really excited about that. And we really put forth really intentionally, because we got our statewide data, which is, I can't stress enough, matches the NAEP data. We have put in different efforts. So we got a $40 million literacy grant to actually talk about implementation, which is key and core. And we're seeing from the other states that are further along in implementation that is key. So we've also gotten funding for coaches, and you know, it's exciting for us because our local math scores are where they were surpassed pre-pandemic. So it's an exciting time, but it's also a time for us to reflect about what needs to happen. Because we didn't drop, that is not something that we're celebrating. What we're looking at is, okay, what does that mean? What do we need to do moving forward? It is a place that all of us need to take seriously, really looking at our data and what is the next step? How do we dive deeper? Because none of us are where we want to be, and we have to move the needle. One of the things that was really important for us is that we worked with the Center for Assessment that really spoke about looking at our data and telling us that it's really going to take anywhere from 5 to 7 years to recover from the pandemic. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing that. And because our data is so correlated to NAEP, our results are so correlated to NAEP, we're seeing footprints of the work and the effort that's taken place, especially in the science of reading. So we know that we will see those move forward. It's important for us here in Rhode Island to stay the course. We have implemented curriculum, we have professional development. Now it's about staying the course and putting our foot on the gas pedal to move it even faster.
Thank you for that. Superintendent Mackey, I'll give you an opportunity. I will say earlier in the town hall that we watched, there was a lot of shout outs to visiting Alabama. So.
Yeah, well, we welcome all visitors. So we're really proud of the progress we've been able to make in mathematics. It's been a long struggle, though, as the Commissioner Infante-Green was talking about. We're obviously not where we want to be in reading or mathematics, but we feel like we've got the right investments, the right strategy, the right plan, and we just have to keep pushing forward with that. In mathematics and in reading, you know, we have recovered above our pre-COVID reading also, even though between 22 and 24 we're essentially even, and we're hoping for a bump as all the states were. But I think what we learned in reading is that just this group of students that had a disrupted kindergarten year and first grade year, it's going to take a long time for those students to recover. We feel better about the students, even using our state assessments, as the Commissioner mentioned, you know, that coming behind, we feel a little better about what we see in first, second grade. But for these students, as they enter middle school and high school, we're worried about what supports they're going to need so that they can be fully successful in high school and beyond. And, you know, we've also been digging in, as all the states have in the last several hours, and what are some key takeaways in our subgroups. And one of the things I'm really, really proud of is how our students have done in special education. So we see that our special needs students, especially in 4th grade math and reading, have really done much better. We've had growth that in some of those groups actually outpaced our overall growth rate. And so, as Dr. West mentioned earlier, we're concerned about the students who struggle the most, and that gap is growing across the country, and that gap is growing here too in some areas. But we really saw some growth in special needs. So one of the things that we want to parse out as state chiefs, and I think I can speak for all the chiefs, we want to look at not just how are we doing in the big picture, but how are our subpopulations doing? What can we take from these data that help us drive better instruction for all of our students going forward?
Yeah, and I think some of that digging in is looking at your state test results that as you saw that if they seem to match, then it's giving you even more information about where to go from there. Let's shift to like some of the evidence-based reading instruction and supports in math that you're both doing. I'm going to parse those apart. You're both doing work in those areas, but because of limited time, I'm going to pick one or the other. So Superintendent Mackey, we saw some promising results and the overall results for you, but talk to us specifically about the work that you're doing in mathematics in Alabama.
Absolutely. We're very proud of what we're doing in mathematics. It's been a priority of mine from day one. Even when I interviewed for this job, I talked about our need to jump immediately into some math improvement. Our board, after that, approved new standards in mathematics that are, we feel like, better aligned to the NAEP framework. We adopted new state tests very closely aligned to that and set rigorous higher cut scores than we had in the past, which we think that's important to try to align our state test as closely with NAEP as we can so we can use those results better. And then we came along our legislature and Governor Ivey said, we will give you even more help and pass the Alabama Numeracy Act, which gives us a large amount of money, regional supports, a regional system to go into schools to help teachers become better teachers of mathematics in grades K-5. And then a big component of it is to put a highly trained mathematics coach in every elementary school in the state. So we have about 260 of those math coaches now. When the law is fully in place, we have about 460, I think. We'll have about 900 when it's all said and done. That's how many schools we have. This is not easy too, because you got to identify those really good elementary math teachers, pull them out of the classroom, train them to be a coach and work not just with students, but with adults. But we're seeing some real success. Again, NAEP, obviously we don't have school and district data, but in our state assessments, we're seeing some real immediate results by putting this high quality instructional materials in the hands of our teachers, giving them high quality targeted professional development in the form of coaching and how to use that material and work with their students. And we think it's making a difference. And obviously these results bear out that it's making a difference. And we're going to continue to do that over the next several years and roll out till we have a math coach in every school and continue to push that forward. Obviously, we're focused on lower grades. I will say that as we look at middle school, as has been already pointed out by Dr. West, we are concerned about keeping those students growing through grades 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're gonna be talking also about what do we need to be doing to support these middle school teachers so we don't lose the ground that we're making in elementary school.
That's right. You both have very supportive governors, legislators. You have like your entire states moving forward with both of these things. We profiled Alabama. Commissioner Infante-Green, you can talk a little bit about that, but you mentioned how much further along you are in reading. If you give us kind of a deep dive into what are you doing around reading?
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of the background first. And I think it's important because one of the things we did was adopted high quality curriculum. We have a list that districts can purchase from. We spend the whole year with them, really looking at the high quality materials, which ones make sense for their school districts. And as we looked at literacy, we really were looking at a curriculum that did have the science of reading already in it, right? Because that was important for us. We know that that's research-based reading. So that was important. So we made sure that all the curriculum were aligned to our curriculum frameworks, academic standards, and we looked at our assessments to do that kind of work. But what we found is fidelity in implementation needs to continue to be stressed. I think that we are seeing it from some surveys that we put in place in terms of curriculum on where we are and how teachers are using the curriculum. And teachers were pretty honest that, you know, sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. And what the curriculum is meant to do is to raise us all to the standard that we should be teaching our kids. And we saw that even before the pandemic, we were in this trajectory. But right now, we're in a place of action, right? And one of the things that's important is that when I started here in 2019, the General Assembly passed the Right to Read Act, similar to what Alabama, what Dr. Mackey did. We have very strong language. The General Assembly passed very strong language on what's expected. And it requires educators to have proficiency or awareness in the science of reading and structured literacy by 25-26. So we're in that phase where everybody is getting trained. There's literacy coaches. We used a lot of our federal dollars in order to make sure that we were implementing and training all the teachers. So that is important for us. So since adopting the evidence-based resources and training with our teachers, we've seen glimmers of hope. We didn't drop, you know, I think, and in particular grades, we're seeing it move a lot faster. The states that actually have this for a while, the science of reading, are the ones that are further ahead. So where we are in implementation matters, and we have to stick to it, right? We have a tendency to kind of go back and forth in education, but that's not what we're going to do in Rhode Island. We are staying the course. We put out a survey to teachers. What are they challenged with? How can we support you? So that phased-in approach has given us sort of an uneven implementation, but this year, everybody's going to be trained. And we know that this is going to yield results. I am actually trained in the science of reading, and that was really important for me as an educator and also as a mom of a differently abled student. That is something that we pushed really hard with. And I mentioned before, the Center for Assessment has said it's going to take us 5 to 7 years. So nobody should be surprised by the data, but it is a call to action. And in Rhode Island, we're going to hit really hard on implementation. What happens in the schools matter. The type of professional development matters. And this data is pretty clear. And if anyone has data that's different than this, you know, we need to look at that, because for us, it's pretty clear what we need to do. And we're using it as a sounding of the alarm to continue to do the work that we know makes a difference.
Yeah, I want to pick up on what you talked about in terms of data. So we know that these NAEP results were a result of tests given a year ago also.
That's right.
And so it matters that we continue to assess and find out where students are and continue to implement the things that you're talking about. So not only staying the course, but also having measures along the way so that we know where we're going. So let me shift just a little bit. And when we look at the results by performance percentiles, Dr. West talked a little bit about this as well. When we see some of our students, lowest performing students losing the most ground. If I could ask you to give me some thoughts about some of the things that you're doing. I know Commissioner Infante-Green, attendance is a key focus for you in Rhode Island.
Yeah, it's actually a key focus globally. I was just invited to go speak overseas about this because they're grappling with this as well. And we have really made attendance a real campaign in Rhode Island. We have the governor, we have a real-time data dashboard that everyone can go to and see what our real-time attendance is. And we didn't do it just by schools, we also did it by neighborhoods, because I want to stress that this call to action is for everyone, not just for the educators, but we have by communities, we have it by municipality. If you're going to go out there, please make sure that the kids come to school. And what we found in our data was a 20 percentage point gap across all assessments for students that are chronically absent and those that attend schools. The ones that are actually attending regularly are doing pretty well. Our challenge is making sure that we have all kids in that place. And what we found with our data, if anyone's interested to go to our website, is that even recovering them 1 year back, makes a 7 to 11% difference. So we can recover these kids, but what we need to do is really focus on getting them into the classroom. So we coupled our attendance with assessment and performance data. That is really important for us because that's what data is supposed to do. It's supposed to drive us to do something. And we're pretty clear that if we can get the kids in the classroom, we will see different outcomes.
Dr. Mackey, I know attendance is important for you too, but I want to highlight one of the things that's come out of our report on mathematics, and that is this extended and after school time and the importance of the connection of that particular time to the high quality materials that you're doing in the classroom. And so would you speak just a little bit about Alabama's efforts there?
Absolutely. As Commissioner Infante-Green mentioned, we got to have them in school. We need them in class to teach them. But then what happens outside the classroom is in many ways almost as important as what happens in the classroom. And that's something that new research is bearing out. I know, again, all the states are working on this. It's what can we do to extend learning? And I'll tell you, here in Alabama, we used our COVID funds largely to provide new summer math reading camps, which we believe are working. We have funded after-school care, some before-school care programs. We have a district that's introduced intercession programs, and those intercession programs have been very successful. And so we decided to now set up an office inside our departments, the Office of Extended Learning, what we call OXL. It's a very small office, starts with one person, but it's trying to coordinate all of the work that we do, all of the federal funds, state funds, and then community partners like YMCA's, Boys and Girls Club. What are we all doing together to make sure we have not just a place for students to go after school, but we have concentrated, focused work for them to do that's tied to what's happening in the school day. And even though we had a lot of programs going on, we felt like they weren't connected enough. So, one of the things that we were all hoping would come from the historic investment in COVID funds is how do we take what worked and find ways to extend it, albeit on a much smaller dime than what we were able to get before. And this is one of those places that I think is a bright spot where we saw something that worked. We went to our legislature and said we need the money to continue these summer reading and math camps. They not only put that in our Numeracy and Literacy Acts, but said when the federal funds run out, we'll fund it, and then put their money where the mouth was and funded it. And we're working now on some other programs for middle grades because we need to get students, many students, especially students that come from families that are economically disadvantaged. They need a place for their children to go after school, often before school, and certainly during the summer. And we can offer them a place to go that's not only a safe place, but it's a place that's tied to learning and help catch those students up. As the commissioner just said, we can bring these students up. We can recover this loss, but we have to have them. And part of that's getting them into class, as she said, but part of it's also what do we do beyond the classroom? And it's a good investment. And I know that these investments are going on all across the country. And I hope that we all take these data as a wake-up sign, but we also take it as a challenge to look at what is working and to build on those things that are working.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on what you just talked about, the pandemic relief funds. And one of the analysis we did was on the 10% set aside that states used and how those funds were spent by states. And what we know is that it was spent primarily on tutoring, accelerated learning, and after school programming. Commissioner Infante-Green, I'll ask you just in a brief amount of time, because we're just about out of time, to talk about how those made a difference or are maybe continuing evidence-based work.
Sure. So we used our pandemic money in many different ways. One of the things that we did is extend the school day by 30 minutes. And that gave us an extra 15 days a year. That was pretty amazing. We ran boot camps during the spring break, the winter break, and kids were coming, right? So we're trying to make up for that lost time. Remember, the kids that took this test were our kindergartners back then. And for them to be able to catch up, reading isn't easy to do online. So we have to give them more time on task. That was something really important for us. And we use that money to give them that opportunity. I think the other piece that's really important is the after school. In Rhode Island, we have Learn 365, meaning learning every day. And it's really important. And the governor has spearheaded that because it's really important for our kids to learn everywhere, have as many opportunities as possible. And if for us, it's really coupling with the cities and towns, the municipalities, so that they can also help provide where we can't. So there's a lot going on, and there is many opportunities, but extra time, I have to tell you, more time learning, enjoying learning, unfortunately, those 30 minutes, 15 days went away, but we are finding ways to keep kids engaged and really learning in different environments outside of the classroom.
Well, I'm going to close us out and same place that Dr. West left, which is progress is possible. We just talked about a good number of those efforts. And the big takeaway for this part of the panel today is that doubling down on evidence-based reading and mathematics strategies is absolutely necessary. We know there's more work to do, but staying the course on being clear about that will be really important. And I want to say on behalf of the state chiefs, we are looking forward to working with Secretary nominee McMahon and the U.S. Department of Education as we push forward to make improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Carissa, and a special thanks to Superintendent Mackey and Commissioner Infante-Green. What a robust discussion, and it is clear we probably did not give enough time to any of our panelists today, but we still have much to come. In that discussion, we really focused on reflections on the state results, and now we want to turn and have time for reflections on the results from the Tribal Urban District Assessment, also known as TUDA. For that, we are joined by our colleagues at the Council of the Great City Schools. The Council of the Great City Schools has prepared a short video overview of the 2024 TUDA results. And after the video, we will be joined by Ray Hart, the Executive Director of the Council of Great City Schools. Before being appointed Executive Director, Ray served for 9 years as the Council's Director of Research. He represents the Council on the national stage and spends most of his time advocating for and working with member districts. And with that, we will turn to the video.
Half of the 25 TUDA districts with scores in both 2022 and 2024 made significant increases in fourth grade mathematics. Compared to the national increase of approximately 2 points, the District of Columbia Public Schools had the largest gain of 10.4 points. They were followed by Guilford County Schools in Greensboro, North Carolina, with a gain of 8.5 points. Baltimore City Public Schools with a gain of 8.4 points. New York City Schools with a gain of 8.1 points. The School District of Philadelphia with a gain of 7.3 points. And the Houston Independent School District with a gain of 7.2 points. It should be noted that the Atlanta Public Schools is the only large city school district to make significant progress in fourth grade reading, with a 6.9 point increase from 2022 to 2024. Atlanta's gain in reading was significantly greater than the state of Georgia, large city schools, and public schools nationally, which significantly declined. In addition, the performance of students in 4 large school districts, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York City, and Philadelphia, was not significantly different than their 2019 pre-pandemic scores in all 4 grade and subject combinations tested. Finally, across the 100 possible comparisons between TUDA and state performance, changes between 2022 and 2024, 98% of the TUDA district score changes were no different from their states or significantly higher. Federal funding and district interventions have played a pivotal role in mitigating the worst outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in fourth grade mathematics, which has recovered significantly after sharp declines in 2022.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that video.
and looking forward to a conversation with two of the districts that were mentioned in that video. And those districts are here with us. First, I want to join CEO Carissa Moffitt-Miller in thanking Dr. Carr and Dr. West for your comments. And also thank you to CCSSO and our state chiefs who just shared a few moments ago their perspectives on the states. And I'd like to also share a report that was done by the Council of the Great City Schools, and it was published in 2021. And we looked specifically at how well large urban school districts overcome the effects of poverty and overcome the effects of poverty and other barriers to improving student achievement. And the two districts that we have with us now not only were featured in that report, but they have also exhibited in the scores that were shared just a moment ago in the video clip that they are continuing to show additional educational torque. At this time, I'd like to introduce and are grateful that they are joining us this afternoon. Two leaders from the nation's largest urban school districts of the 26 districts that participated in the Trial Urban District Assessment this year. From the DC Public Schools, Chancellor Louis Ferebee, and from the Guilford County Public Schools in Greensboro, North Carolina, Superintendent Dr. Whitney Oakley. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And again, the scores that were just shared a moment ago really highlight that the two of you, particularly in mathematics, had the led and then were second in among two of the districts in improving mathematics scores at grade 4 and recovering significantly faster than your states respectively. I'd like to start with Superintendent Oakley, and just like to ask that you share a bit about what are some of the specific programs and initiatives in your district that you implemented to help your students recover academically from the pandemic and that are reflected in these scores.
Sure, and thank you. I think, like we've heard before, what we are seeing is momentum in pandemic recovery, and we heard some of the state leaders mention, but we've just continued to follow the research. So the showing of momentum means we have to keep doing what's working for large districts, and we've done that from the beginning, even from when we submitted our very first COVID plan. Our plan included access to high quality instructional materials. It included investments in professional learning. It made sure we were accelerating, not just remediating, and that we provided consistent research-based access to high dosage tutoring. So Guilford County Schools is one of the first districts nationwide to launch a homegrown high dosage tutoring program in response to the pandemic. And it was certainly one of the first to rapidly scale the program. We were able to reach over 17,000 students in the 23-24 school year. And thanks to philanthropic and community support beyond the COVID funding, we've already held nearly 90,000 tutoring sessions this year. Students can also schedule virtual tutoring appointments to receive that just-in-time assistance from licensed teachers. We know that in addition to high quality instructional materials, extended learning time, like we heard about earlier today, is also important. So we were able to launch learning hubs in the evenings at our high schools where students have flexible opportunities to come have additional supports and fill those individual skill gaps. More than 5,000 high school students are choosing to attend these evening learning hubs where teachers provide those supports. And those students who were able to attend had better attendance rates, they had higher graduation rates, which means the students themselves recognize the value of the individual targeted support. And I think that's contributing to the momentum that we're seeing. So really now we stay the course. Momentum requires us to keep going, and we're certainly not where we want to be. The implementation of the high quality curriculum, the coherent curriculum, extending those learning opportunities like the high dosage tutoring and professional learning for teachers is what's going to keep us going. And we know that we have a long road ahead.
Thank you for sharing, and it's great to hear that you're able to continue some of those supports that you were able to begin during the as you expended your ARP and ESSER funding. So that is wonderful to hear. And Chancellor Ferebee, we'll turn to you as well. The national recovery in grade 4 mathematics was about 2.4 score points on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Your district saw improvements of 10.4 points. Can you share a little bit with us about how you were able to do that, and what are some of the things that you've done to improve outcomes for your students, particularly in mathematics?
Yeah, thank you, Ray. Good afternoon, and thank you to the Council of Great City School and the State School Officers National Governors Association for hosting this convening. Ray, before I dive in to some of my favorite topics about math, I have to say that I am a proud North Carolinian and spent over a decade in Guilford County schools. So Superintendent Oakley, is heartwarming to see the district's success, and congratulations to you and your team. Reflecting on DC Public Schools' success in math and the NAEP results, we're really proud to see a double-digit increase since 2022. And we believe, very similar to Guilford County Schools, what we call high-impact tutoring was a major driver. For us, we call this HIT, and it was an area where we were supporting students both in math and literacy, but as Superintendent Oakley mentioned, it's an opportunity to have a very intensive intervention for those students who need it the most. For many of our schools, this occurred during the day, after school, during the summers as well. And we had a highly qualified tutor with our student. And what we also saw is not only gains in math proficiency, but we saw correlations between the tutoring and attendance, which is really important because we know students, to be at their best, they need to be in school. We also took a look at our curriculum. So we changed our curriculum in many of our grade span areas to ensure that we had best in class. One to point out was our shift in early literacy and early math. With math, we adopted what we call building blocks, which is a nationally recognized curriculum around building the foundational skills in mathematics we know that were important for students to go into kindergarten and first grade ready for more advanced math. We're also thrilled that we have been inviting everyone to be a math person. And what that means is richer professional learning experiences for our teachers. We're partnered with local university here where we are providing additional certificate opportunities for teachers to deepen their understanding in math. We've also established math competitions that are hosted here at Google DC. This is another way to create mathematicians, but also their problem-solving skills and the spirit of competition we found has been really helpful. And then we've tried to connect with our families about math instruction and how they can support math at home. As you know, oftentimes there's a gap between what parents refer to as new math and the way that math is being provided in terms of instruction in school compared to the way they learn math. And so we've had a number of math family fairs, and our schools have been engaging families around math because, you know, the days of borrow the one and carry the two with regrouping is different. And we want to be sure that families are comfortable and can support their students at home. And so we believe the high impact tutoring, the professional learning experiences we provided for our educators, the competitions, and then also better connections with our families around math help boost our math results.
Well, thank you for sharing and being a math person as well. Glad to hear you discuss the importance of mathematics. The American Rescue Plan, and both from the Trump administration previously as well as the Biden administration, we saw elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds being invested in our districts in really wise ways to improve students' achievement. And while we can't expect the academic recovery timeline to quite match up with the Tidings Amendment in the American Rescue Plan, which kind of shortened when you could expend the funds, how did you, in your district, Superintendent or Chancellor Ferebee, how did you utilize those funds, and how have your federal investments really helped you in your district to achieve the accomplishments that we've seen in your NAEP results?
Yeah, Ray, I think it's important for us to go back to our initial return from remote learning and what was happening around health and safety at the time. So we did leverage some of our ESSER funding on short-term needs related to health and safety, so we could get students back in school as quickly as possible. We also invested in the technology we needed for remote learning. And so that was a part of our initial investment. But we also made investments that could be sustained beyond the ESSER time period. A great example of that is what we've invested in our framework around our multi-tier system of support, also known as MTSS. This was very instrumental in implementing our high-impact tutoring. And so we believe the structures that we've created, the training that we've created for staff, and the systems associated with MTSS that are in place will live beyond the initial investment. We've also, as I mentioned earlier, made some investments in our curriculum across grade bands. And so we also believe that this will live beyond the investment, specifically focus on our students with IEPs and also our English language learners, in addition to math and literacy. These were very large-scale investments that will continue on beyond the federal funds and will benefit our students for years. So we're really pleased with that. And then I mentioned earlier the professional learning experiences for our educators. So this is something that we also believe will live beyond the investment. And so there's the short term and then there's the long term. And then one area I also highlight is what we call our acceleration academies. And so these were dollars that we allocated directly to schools for evidence-based strategies that would occur outside of the regular school day. So this includes after school, Saturday academies, summer programming, and we had each school within some guardrails develop their own acceleration academies based on the needs of their student population. And we thought this was a very helpful approach to getting started and jumpstarting the recovery process. And now we've shifted more outside of our acceleration academies to our high impact tutoring and then the continued implementation of MTSS. And so we believe that these were very smart investments. We also encourage our schools and our central service team to not invest in those strategies that would not live beyond this investment period or where we would have a huge funding cliff.
Wonderful, thank you, and great to hear how you've invested wisely. And Superintendent Oakley, one of the things that we recognized as well was across a number of our districts the need to invest in supporting the social, emotional, and Chancellor Ferebee mentioned the mental health needs of our students as they return. Can you describe how you have done that by investing funds and helping to strengthen your communities and your school communities after the pandemic?
Sure, and likewise, there were short-term things we had to do, and then longer-term things that we really believe should become part of the fabric of public education. And so in Guilford County schools, we really tried to strategically use those relief funds to reimagine what schools could and should be. We leaned in very much to taking care of the whole child, which included providing mental health services, not just for students, but also for staff, and thinking about how we could sustain that over time. Students, perform better, of course, when they feel supported both physically, emotionally, and mentally. So we've really prioritized mental health and tried to make ourselves a national thought partner in that area. We're in the process of implementing nearly $30 million in grant funding to support our students' mental health. In our first full year of implementation, Guilford County Schools providers and contracted staff were able to serve more than 1,000 students and more than 9,000 mental health sessions. So children and families are taking advantage of these services when we're able to provide them. And to further support our goals, we were able to get some significant grant funding to expand telehealth and mental health services. So this school year, we've opened an additional 12 telehealth programs, which means we now have 26 operating sites in elementary Title I schools. It means students can usually remain at school for basic health concerns like a headache or an earache, and even receive medical care with parent permission, allowing parents, many of whom are hourly workers, to not miss work, to be able to address those needs. And in most cases, students are able to return to the classroom preserving that very valuable instructional time. So as we work through this grant and its funding, we know it remains a need across our country, and we're committed to staying the course to provide mental health supports in our schools.
Thank you for sharing that. We know that kind of the wraparound services for our children, particularly our children from our traditionally marginalized communities, are so vital and so critical to really supporting their educational needs and their educational environment. So I'll ask you both the one last question. Our districts, the Trial Urban District Assessment Districts, or TUDA districts, all volunteer to take NAEP. And really be really to address and learn from the national data set to allow you to address specific needs. As you move forward and as your journey towards sustaining the academic recovery from not only the pandemic, but the challenges that have faced our communities across the country. We heard a few moments ago about the reading challenges that we're having across the country. What advice would you give to district leaders in particular about the needs moving forward to sustain the progress that we've seen academically?
Well, I'm happy to start. I think when Superintendent Oakley mentioned the word reimagine, I think that is great advice for all of us all. I think when we think about where we are, I'll point to our high school redesign, our partnership with XQ, ensuring that we are thinking about innovation and also our partnerships. I also think representing this work is to continue to think about our people. In our partnerships, we invested a lot in our staff and the type of rich professional learning experiences they needed to have to recover and recover strong for our students. And so I think those are the types of investments that we need to continue to make. I also believe that we have to keep our eye on chronic absenteeism and attendance. We saw nationally, and was true here in DC, that we struggle with attendance coming out of the pandemic, and we've now seen, as a result of our efforts of reminding families how important each day is and reaching out to families when students aren't in school, that we've seen truancy decrease. We also seen an increase in-seat attendance, and that's so important. It's obvious. You need students in school to learn, and so those are approaches that we will continue on. And I think I will close with this note about the high impact tutoring. There were a time where when you need these services, families had to go in their own pocket and invest. And I think it's so important that more districts now have created these opportunities within their district at no cost to the family. And I think it's certainly a strategy that we all should try to sustain.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think we all have to remember that public education, when we're serving in leadership roles, have to remember that public education really is in the fight of its life, not only just recovering from the pandemic, but making sure that we're adequately funded, that lawmakers see the value of public education and see us as the foundation of what a healthy society looks like. We keep in mind all the time that public schools are the only place where every student is invited to come and to receive a world-class education that allows them to explore pathways that will shape our world. And as we think more and more about workforce development and pipeline and how we move forward as a community and as a country, it just increases the value that we can and should place on public education as we move forward.
Thank you for sharing that. And yes, public education has always been the cornerstone of a strong America and a strong society. And our investments in public education are vital moving forward. I just want to take a moment just to thank the two of you for not only joining us here on the panel, but thank you to you and all of your colleagues, not only across the Trial Urban District Assessment Districts, but all of your colleagues who sit in the superintendent or chancellor's seat across the country, for the incredible work that you, your staffs, your teams, your teachers have done in helping our children each and every day to learn and to grow. And we have the greatest confidence that you'll continue to do that and continue to serve our nation valiantly. And on behalf of the Council of Great City Schools, I just want to say as well, we look forward to working with the new Congress, as well as working with the new administration as we all work together to build on what we have, but improve educational outcomes for all of our kids. So thank you all for having us, and we look forward to the conversations ahead.
Thank you, Ray. And I just want to echo our thanks to Chancellor Ferebee and Superintendent Oakley for joining us today and for their insights onto the results and where they are going to take their districts next. I am pleased to now transition us to our friends at the National Governors Association. We are now joined by Bill McBride, the Executive Director of the National Governors Association. Bill is a veteran state and federal policy strategist who has served since 2019 as the Executive Director of NGA, which has represented the interests of governors of the nation's states, commonwealths, and territories for over a century. Bill, I will turn it to you.
Great. Thank you, Melissa, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy to join you today. And so on behalf of the National Governors Association, it's my privilege to introduce our chair, Colorado Governor Jared Polis. As our NGA chair, Governor Polis launched an initiative called Let's Get Ready, Educating All Americans for Success. And this initiative couldn't be more timely, and governors from both sides of the aisle are joining in to find bipartisan solutions to this most important bipartisan issue. Through Let's Get Ready, governors are meeting regularly throughout the year to share ideas and best practices and to collaborate on developing more effective metrics to identify what's working and, just as importantly, what's not working. And when the initiative wraps up in July, findings will be compiled into a roadmap governors can use to drive innovation and better measure outcomes in their states. So NGA is so pleased to work so closely with all of you, along with other education leaders, parents, and students on this initiative. And to share more, let's welcome the chair of the National Governors Association, Governor Jared Polis. Governor?
Thank you, Bill. You know, the nation's report card is a very valuable resource as we work to boost student achievement and outcomes, to be able to measure across different standards who's achieving in reading and math and science and why, make sure that kids have access to a high quality education. In Colorado, when the last NAEP scores came out 2 years ago, as an example, we really acted on the insights and we took actions to boost math achievement in particular, including passing legislation to create out of school time opportunities centered around STEM and math, supporting math focused, data driven teacher preparation and professional development that we know leads to better outcomes, and helping schools acquire high quality instructional math materials. I also used some of my GEAR funds, which we were excited to have the opportunity to deploy as governors to improve results, to fund free licenses to digital math accelerators to all Colorado elementary and middle schools. As we can see so clearly from today's results, there's more work to be done. We're 1 year into our math work that will continue through this school year as well. But we're glad to see some of the targeted improvements in many areas that governors have focused on. This new data shows that it's really all hands on deck for education. Test scores confirm that, of course, across our country, there are many students who are struggling. We also know that's not the whole story. Reading and math scores have been declining for a number of years, including prior to the pandemic, especially for the lowest performing students, for at-risk students. And our challenge is not to get back to normal. It's to reverse decades of deterioration to make sure that every child is equipped with the skills and knowledge they need to succeed. This widening gap between America's top performing students and struggling students is simply unacceptable in the United States. And this moment, I hope, is a catalyst for innovation, doing things differently, expanding and replicating what works, and having the moral fortitude to change what isn't working. From quality early childhood education, evidence-based tutoring and after-school opportunities, innovative school models, everything should be on the table to make sure that every student, and that means every student, no matter where they live and who they are, can succeed. I'm so proud that governors from both sides of the aisle are joining my Let's Get Ready initiative to make real bipartisan progress on this important issue. Governors are in an important position to deliver because education makes up the biggest part of nearly all of our budgets, somewhere between a quarter and a third of our state budgets. And we need to make sure that we're getting that return on investment, that ROI, both for individual learners and also to drive economic competitiveness for our states. Math and reading outcomes are critical to make sure that students are ready and prepared for their future. If students can't read, they're not going to be able to unlock all of the great career and post-secondary and workforce options that'll help them earn a good living and support themselves. Part of my initiative is making sure that we're making school more relevant. Yes, of course, kids need to know the reading and the math, but what other skills and knowledge and certification do they need to be able to get the good jobs of today and the good jobs of tomorrow? And how can we measure that as effectively as NAEP and our state-based standardized tests look at academic achievement? Thank you for leading into this effort. Our students are a very important investment for the future of our states, the future of our country, the future of our economy. And that's why it's so important for all governors to review the state-specific data included here to make informed decisions that drive change and state policy about how to improve educational outcomes for all students. It starts with reading and math. It continues with how we can make sure that every student is successfully prepared for a career. Together, we can use these insights to better set every student up for success and make sure that no matter where you live across this great country, you're able to achieve at grade level or above and are prepared for success in life. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Governor Polis, and thanks to all the education leaders who've joined us today. And NJ looks forward to working with all of you on Governor Polis's Let's Get Ready initiative, including at our NJ winter meeting coming up in 3 weeks in Washington, D.C. So over to you, Melissa.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to Governor Polis for joining us today. We really appreciate your remarks, and thanks to Bill McBride as well for joining us with the National Governors Association. I want to say thank you to the Council of Chief State School Officers, the Council of the Great City Schools, and the National Governors Association again for their partnership and co-hosting this virtual event today to reflect on the results of the 2024 Nations Report Card. Again, a special thanks to Commissioner Carr for joining us at the beginning of the event, as well as Martin West with the National Assessment Governing Board. And thanks to each of you for joining us today as participants. I hope that you learned something new today that you didn't get at first in reading the 2024 Nations Report Card results. I know that I've walked away with new perspectives on the state and the TUTA results that I did not otherwise have before the call. A few takeaways that I just jotted down in my notes: progress is possible. We heard also about staying the course on strategies that have an evidence base, whether that's in math or in reading or multi-tier systems of support, as just a few examples. The governor just talked about how we want to stay data-driven. We also heard ideas about ways to reimagine things that we know are not working and ways we can make school more relevant. We also heard the importance of attendance and how challenging it can be for kids to learn if they are not in school anymore. Each of you likely has your own list of takeaways as well. So we have reached the end of our programming today. This is recorded and we'll be sure to send it out on CCSSO's channels. And I know the Council of the Great City Schools and NGA will be sure to share it as well. Thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.